Welcome to Etihad Cargo Connections. My name is Ron Anderson, and tonight I'm joined by trainer William Knight. How are we tonight, Will?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is going to be really good. So we'll just start at the start. How did you get into the sport of horse racing initially, and where were you born and grew up?
So I was born in the UK. My family were sort of farming family. So I always rode as a young kid, always very interested in the racing side of it. I used to come up to Newmarket a bit of my holidays and ride out when I was younger. I went and did an equine degree at university, and then sort of had some time in America, came back to England and sort of just learnt my trade working for a couple of trainers and on a studs, and sort of then got into training that way.
Yeah, and growing up around farming and animals, what was it about horses that really got you passionate?
Well, I've always loved the horse, my whole family, we all sort of rode as well. And I think we had cattle, sheep on the farm as well. So I've always sort of been brought up in the outdoors. Following this sort of route was, I was never going to go and work in an office.
Yeah, that's it. And so when was it you actually decided to go the route of pursuing a career in training?
Probably wasn't until I was in America, in Kentucky, and came back from there. And I really felt that sort of the sort of route I wanted to go down, the training side more than the bloodstock side. And I think my first real job as an assistant was with John Hills in Lambourne. I was his assistant for a couple of years, and that really sort of cemented it. And I really, that was my aim from that point when I was about 22, 23 years old.
And I'm sure if there was anywhere you really, can have that passion ignited in America, it's definitely would be Kentucky, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was an amazing place, Kentucky. And, I was 20 when I went out there. I worked on John and Bell Farm out there to start with before it was a Darley farm. I loved it out there. I had an amazing time, and, it really sort of set me up for when I came back to England.
And when did you when was your first season with that trainer's license?
I think it was 2006 off the top of my head. So I had sort of a few years with John Hills as assistant in Lambourne. I then came up to Newmarket and I was an assistant trainer to Ed Dunlop. I think it was 2006 I started. I took my license out. It was a bit of a shot in the dark, because it's very easy for people to say they're going to send you a horse. As you're an assistant trainer to someone, so we'll support you, but it's when you actually ask them to write a check out, that's the telling point. And I got very lucky. I had a big supporter when I started, which just came out of the blue. Peter Galandros, who owned Husband Stud at the time, he sent me about 10 horses in my first year, and as well as a few others I had. It really helped me get going.
And it's funny you say that. I was speaking with trainer Carl Burke a few nights ago, and he said, when he was initially in terms of preparing horses for owners and other trainers, and someone said, if you get involved in head training yourself, we'll support you 100%. And I think he said something like, but you're tempted by that, but as soon as you pursue it, obviously no one's there to, and as you said, when it comes time to write a check, there's not as many voices speaking up, so to speak.
Yeah, I sort of look back at it now and I think, God, I was mad. I started with I managed to get a 50 grand unsecured loan through Allied Irish, and which you had to sort of show the jockey club that's what you had in your account. And my wife Emily and I moved down to Sussex from being in Newmarket when I was an assistant to Ed, and we started training down there. But I think when you're young like that, you're a little bit carefree, and I wanted it so much that it was so your head ruled it, really.
Yeah, most definitely.
Ruled your head, that's what I mean.
Yeah. And so last year, we'll just talk about last year first off. You had that listed race as well, the Group 3 with Check and Challenge, and a Group 2 with Sir Busker. who we'll obviously be discussing later on. What have been some other highlights of your career to date over nearly 20 years of head training?
Well, I think the horse which really sort of put me on the map, got me going, was a horse called Illustrious Blue, back in the early parts of training. I actually came out your way for the Melbourne Cup with him. He won a Goodwood Cup, and he won out in Dubai as well. Quite early on in my training career, I thought it was all easy then, you see, and it was. He really sort of helped put my name out there. And we've sort of had a quietish. We've had a few stakes horses in between Illustrious and sort of over the last few years. But it's nice that it really needed that good horse to come along again, and Sir Busker's helped me with that, and hopefully Check and Challenge can continue it now. And it's so important to have.
Yeah, and my next question was around Illustrious Blue. The Group Two Goodwood Cup, as well as the Sagro Stakes. Also ran the Melbourne Cup. What have been, along with Sir Busker, and you mentioned at Check and Challenge as well, what have been some other great horses you've had the opportunity to train during those 20 years?
No, well, look, I've had some nice horses, but nothing in that sort of. I had a decent horse called King of Dixie, who was sort of listed class. We've had some nice early horses which looked like they were going to be decent, but we then, because of the profile, because we've had to sell, they've been sold on to Hong Kong or the likes. But no, they really, we've lacked a flagship horse, as in a stakes horse for a while. So we had a nice horse called Fireship who won a Group 3, the Pre-Quincy out in France, and he was decent, but he wasn't sort of Group 1, Group 2 class.
Mm-hmm. And we've spoken briefly about Sir Busker flying the flag for the stable currently, having won that Group 2. Can you tell us a little bit about him? His pedigree and how he came to be with you.
Well, he was a cheaply bought yearling, I would say. At Tattersalls Island. Luke Livingston from Kennet Valley Thoroughbred sort of put it up to me. He does a lot of the selections does all the selections for him and Sam Hoskins for Kennet Valley, and it was put up to me when I was over there in Ireland. I looked at him, I liked him. His pedigree wasn't much to write home about. He was by Sir Prancelot, who was doing well enough, but he was out of a Tiger Hill mare who hadn't really produced that much. So, and Kennet Valley are quite strict on pedigree. But as an individual, he was just a lovely individual. He had a lovely walk to him. And I said to Luke, let's go for it. I think the guys behind the computer screens back at home, sort of in Kennet Valley, who are looking at the pedigree and everything, are like, why are we buying this horse? But obviously the rest is history. But he always took even when we broke him in, I always liked him. I broke him in myself there with my head girl actually, and he always had a bit about him, and he won as a 2-year-old. A little bit quirky, so as a 3-year-old it just didn't go all the way to plan until Jamie Spencer rode him at the end of his 3-year-old career, I think, and we rode him out the back, and I think sort of realized, got his run style right that time, and and as I say, the rest is history. He's just gone from strength to strength.
And he's now nominated, and you're preparing for the Neom Turf and the Saudi Cup. What's his program going to look like over in Saudi?
Well, so he's going to go for the Neom now. We've made that decision. It was we were invited for the Saudi Cup, and as much as it was very, very tempting, I just kept on going back to the fact that he's never run on that sort of dirt before, and I just felt that looking at the entries on the Neom, it looks a race he could win, whereas. There were too many probably variables with the Saudi Cup. And again, yes, the prize money is fantastic, but look, the Neom is pretty good prize money as well. The whole scheme of things. So, I think we could go there with a real chance of potentially winning that.
And just while we're talking in the arena of prize money, who's the ownership behind Sir Busker?
So he's owned by Kennet Valley Thoroughbreds, which constitute of 16 individual owners. So they split it 16 ways. of which, so they are from all walks of life. You got a lovely group of people. Quite a few of them have already had horses with me before as well, but some of the long existing clients of Kennet Valley. And they've just been on an amazing journey, and they are also appreciative of it as well, because as we all know, these good horses are so hard to find. But yeah, he's given them so much fun and enjoyment, and that's just riding the crest of the wave, really.
And once he goes over and has his go in the Neon, what's his plan look like once he returns back home?
Well, he's going to come home, and then we're going to hopefully come back out to Dubai. And he's either in the Dubai Turf, which he was 5th in last year. I have given him an entry in the Shima Classic. I think after he runs in the Neon, we'll get a good indication. I love, for me, if there was a race over 1.25 miles in Dubai, that's what we'd be doing. The Dubai Turf's obviously 1.1 miles. The Shima Classic's 1.5 miles. So that might just be stretching him a bit. But, as you've seen in his races, he always finishes his races hard. And, he is out of a Tiger Hill mare. You just never know. But as I say, we'll see how he goes in Saudi first, but definitely the next option is Dubai World Cup night, but which race, as I say, it's slightly undecided. And
are there any other planned stablemates to head out to Dubai with Sir Busker?
Not this year, no. We've only got him going out there. Maybe we've got a couple potentially who could get out there next year. Obviously, Check and Challenge would be a horse. Kennet Valley have got a nice horse called Dual Identity, who was very unlucky in the Cambridgeshire not to win. He could be sort of getting in that grade of racing then next year potentially. So, but this year, no, he'll be my only horse out in Dubai.
And how long have you been heading out to Saudi carnivals as well as Dubai?
I've never had a runner in Saudi before. I've been there. I went to the meeting the first year it was held. Dubai, I've been there quite a lot. Obviously, Illustrious Blue won out there. We had a horse called Aussie Reigns was 2nd out there. A horse called Solar Flare ran out there. So we've done that trip quite a lot. I love it. I think it's I like giving them a break here back in England, sort of in October, November time, or even September, October time, which was Sir Busker's case. And then coming out to Dubai where they're fresh, and they start their season off in that warmer climate, and then they come back to England, I think, with having had the sun on their backs, and it's almost like a sort of winter training camp for them, and I think they really benefit for it.
And you mentioned as well, you have that experience as an assistant trainer to both John Hills and Ed Dunlop. What did your time with them teach you? Not only that, but how did that period set you up to go it alone in the industry?
Yeah, well, I think both Ed and John, John nowadays were both good at sending horses abroad. John Hills was, often had horses running, whether it be Italy, Samoritz, Hong Kong. When I was there, Docksider won the Hong Kong Mile. He had runners out in Samoritz, so he liked traveling his horses, and Ed Dunlop as well. When I was with Ed, I was there the years of sort of Ouija board, not just Ouija board, not just Leilani. So I was involved in very much the planning side of it all as well, and I think that's really important. I enjoy that side of it, the planning, getting it right, because when you do send a horse abroad, there's a lot of things involved, and having worked for the likes of John and for Ed especially, it sort of definitely stood me in good stead for moments like now.
And just talk about that as well, not only that experience as an assistant trainer, but also now as a head trainer, bringing them down here as well as to Dubai. You're heading to Saudi as well. The importance of moving horses internationally, and understanding that some horses won't travel well, whereas some, really enjoy it. What have you learnt, or how far has that aspect of the game come in terms of traveling horses, Well, I think firstly, the horse is important. You've got to have the right type of horse to do it. A horse which, has a good temperament, is an easy enough horse to train, is a sound horse.
that's all important, that you got the right type to send out there, not something you really need to be watching every day at home. And so that's important. I think the veterinary side of it's important, making sure that, you know, when they do travel abroad, and it's obviously got better and better, that, you know, everything is done correctly veterinary wise. You know, the horses will make sure that they're well hydrated all the time, you know, because, you know, they don't want to pick up any sort of travel sickness on their way over there. You know, making sure that, you know, all those things are done properly, and staffing it. You know, you've got to have the right staff out there with you. And I've got a very good traveling head girl who you know, has done a lot of trips for me. And, you know, when I worked for Ed Dunlop and Jordan Hills, he had good traveling people, because, you know, I can't be there all the time. And so you need the right people looking after the horse, making sure that they're doing the right, you know, they're thinking on their feet. And the horse is being trained as I would train them, and so that's very important as well. So yeah, various there are various points which are all but very important in making sure that it all goes smoothly and hopefully a successful trip.
And when is Sir Busker in Saudi now with the meet on the 25th, 26th?
No, he goes out the week before. So he flies on the Saturday and then runs the following Saturday.
Excellent.
Which is good, because it gives him I think that's fine. And I quite like running him off the plane. I've been successful in doing that. You know, obviously in Australia, they have to have a slightly longer period to quarantine before they're allowed to run. But in Saudi or Dubai, you know, they can run a week later. And I think that gives them enough time just to, and also, yeah, look, it's hot out in Saudi. It's hotter than it is here, obviously, but it's not stifling hot. So, you know, it's like a lovely summer's day, really. So I think they just enjoy it. They get the sun on their backs, and, you know, they enjoy it.
And you mentioned it earlier as well. 3 years ago, you moved from the team from Sussex to where you are now in Newmarket. Tell us a little bit about Rathmore Stables and how important the facility is to your success in the team.
Well, we've really stepped up a level moving to Rathmore. You know, Sussex was lovely. We trained in a beautiful place down there at Angmering Park, Lady Harry's place, who you know, had trained there for a good while and was very successful from there. But Rathmore Stables is a state-of-the-art yard. It was only built sort of 8 years ago. It used to be the plot of where Neville Callahan trained, but basically it was knocked down and rebuilt. We've got lots of amazing facilities here. We've got an indoor covered ride. We have a swimming pool, equine swimming pool, got turnout paddocks. We've got treadmills, we've got equine spas. And then the layout of the yard is, you know, done to a very high spec, great ventilation. It's all very safe, rubber floored. So, you know, it's a lovely yard, and it's, you know, literally you walk out the back there and you're onto the Newmarket training grounds, of which there are hundreds of gallops and walkways and what have you. So yeah, look, if I can't train a horse from here, I'm never going to be able to train a horse, because you have everything here for you. So in that respect, yeah, fantastic facilities. And
in 2006, in your first season as a trainer, how many horses did you start with?
I think we bred about 16 probably. Yeah, in my first year, yeah.
And now, how many boxes or horses do you have in the stable?
We would be around about 45, 50 horses. We were up to sort of around the 60s, but we were always around that sort of 550 horses. So we need more. Yeah. And that's why we moved back to Newmarket. You know, I just felt that we were just sort of going through the motions a bit down in Sussex, and we needed to sort of, you know, in order to survive in this industry, numbers are important. And, you know, more horses you have, the more chance you have for finding that good one. And, you know, moving to obviously what was a lovely yard, but also being back into the headquarters, you know, being in Newmarket, you know, it's sort of given us you know, probably raised our profile slightly.
And you mentioned Sir Busker in terms of, you know, Sir Busker check and challenge as well. What do you have any, you know, you also spoke about finding that special horse and needing the right horse to target specific international races, especially. Are there any younger ones, you know, a colt that comes to mind when you mentioned when you saw Sir Busker, you knew by the way he walked and that little bit of attitude that he had something different? Is there anything else you have, you know, maybe a diamond in the rough that people should keep an eye out for going forward?
As in the yearly 2-year-olds, it's early days. Early days. And unfortunately, I don't think I've got a good horse in my 3-year-old division. But you never know. Something comes out and surprises you. Just never know. They are so hard. They are hard to find. And when we don't have the big numbers like some of the big yards do, it becomes even harder.
Yeah.
And also our I'm not saying you have to have lots of money to buy good horses, because obviously Sir Busker is a prime example. But my brother and I, who does a lot of the buying for me, we don't have the big bucks like some of these big trainers do to buy these horses. So look, I always hope, and this is what you always hope something comes out. And yes, we've got some nice 2-year-olds, but whether there's a good one there, God knows.
Far too early, yeah, for sure. And is it a case of, if you had the right horse, you'd bring it, down here for our big races like the Melbourne Cup, and primarily had a race runner in there before?
Look, I'd love to bring a horse down to Australia, and obviously Sir Busker, we definitely thought about bringing down for the Cox Plate. So it was a consideration. Check and Challenge is, there's definitely a consideration for him now for this year, end of this year, races like that for him. I think it will really suit him out there. So yeah, I would love to come back out to Australia. I think the prize money out there is fantastic. Even the carnival coming up in March now, the Sydney, the prize money is so good, and we'd be stupid not to try and find something for it. And I've been in touch with a few people from Oz about sort of organising trips and getting out there, and you guys have been very helpful. So yeah, I would like to think sooner rather than later we'll be down there with a good horse, hopefully trying to steal some of your prize money.
That's really good. That's what we like to hear. That we like international players coming down. It's always good fun. So in the 20 years that you've been, since 2006, nearly 20 years that you've been a head trainer, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned that have really held you in great stead for continued success?
Patience with the horses, I think, is so important. So as regards to training, you've got to have the patience, and that's not only comes from me, but my staff, my owners. But going back to this, you've also got to have the right team around you. You've got to have good staff, because they are so important to the whole operation. Whether it's your head girl, your travelling head person, or travelling head person, your riders, you've got to have your vets, you've got to have the right people, you've got to buy the right horses. So your bloodstock agents or your advisors on purchasing horses are very important. But I think, you've got to, I try to think, what is so important. You've got to be a good organizer. You've got to be able to delegate well. There's so many bits to the business. It's not just about training a horse up a hill, getting it fit for a race. There's so many different aspects to it. It's the management of the staff, management of owners, the runnings of a yard, the business side of it, which when you sort of learn as an assistant trainer, you don't really have much to do with. And probably that was when I first started, was the biggest rude awakening for me. You're suddenly running a business where you're paying wages, you're paying for feed bills, you're paying for hay, straw, bedding, all those sort of things. Is something you sort of almost learn on the track, and if you don't get that bit right, then no one survives. So so there's so many variables to it, but I think regards training the horses, sort of being patient and best placing your horses in the right races is so important.
And just final question, if there was any race domestically at home or abroad internationally that you would love to compete in, or really hit that win, where would it be and why?
The Saudi Cup, because it's worth 8 million to the winner.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. That is a great way to end the chat, William. It's been really good.
Great. Thanks, mate.
Thanks so much, mate. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Cheers.